Yo, you are listening to the Money Matters podcast with myself, Jack Mallers. We've got Dylan Lito here, not in a cabin this time. He's back in Chicago. And we've got William Mallers Jr., aka my father, rejoining after probably our most popular episode of all time. We're bringing him back. How you guys doing?
Excellent.
Better now that I think we figured out the internet thing. Turns out recording a podcast from a cabin just doesn't work. So happy to be in Chicago, happy to have internet, and happy to be here.
How's your cabin? What were you doing?
It was good. I went snowboarding. I fell on my ass about 1,000 times. Basically broke both my wrists, actually, but I fell a gajillion times. But I was snowboarding, and it was pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
First time doing that.
Do you ever snowboard, Dad? I feel like you took me maybe once. I don't remember skiing or anything.
No, that's one of the few things you cannot do with hip surgery. There's a dislocation risk anytime. I mean, water skiing would be the worst because you just get pulled. You just get pulled out of the socket, right?
Yeah.
So no, one of the few things you cannot do. But that's Cookie's area. She's a Norwegian cross country skiing.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Cookie? No.
Well, thank you guys for tuning back in. And before we get started, who sponsors this podcast? Nobody. We remind you every single week that we do this self-funded because we believe in an honest, transparent, curious, intellectually, spontaneous type of Bitcoin focused conversation. We want a conversation that we can be talking directly to Bitcoiners, directly to our audience. There's no sponsor that's going to bias or direct any of our opinions, any of our thoughts. And we think over time, that's a really, really important voice in the space. I'm the founder and CEO of Strike, which is one of the leading Bitcoin companies in the space. My dad's been a Bitcoiner for 11 years now and has been in financial markets for over 40. And Dylan is my chief of staff. So he helps run one of the biggest Bitcoin forward businesses in this space. So we pay for this podcast ourselves. It is never going to have sponsors as far as I'm concerned. And we just believe truly in Bitcoin focused conversation. So if you want to support us, you can use Strike. That's the best way to do so. We'll sell you Bitcoin. If you want to sell us Bitcoin, if you want to store your Bitcoin, if you want to move your Bitcoin. But this is a Strike self-sponsored pod. And with that, Dylan is the man with the agenda. So Dylan, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about one thing and one thing only. Well, we'll see where the conversation leads us. But from a topical standpoint, I think that the most interesting thing right now happening in Bitcoin was the Satoshi emails. And so before we get into the emails themselves, just out of genuine curiosity, for people that might not be aware, there were some Satoshi emails that recently came to light as a result of what I believe is a COPA case against a certain individual. I don't know if we can name him or not, or if that presents legal risk. But for anyone who doesn't know, can you explain why these Satoshi emails came to light this week?
Yeah. Well, you're scaring me. Are we not allowed to say people's name? I think we can, right?
I think we can.
Yeah. I mean, so Craig Wright has been suing various people in the Bitcoin space, predominantly developers. And over the years, he's had this really gargantuan claim that he is Satoshi Nakamoto. And he's been suing people and harassing people to effectively just defend that claim and that brand. And he's taken that brand and launched his own Bitcoin fork. So he's launched his own shitcoin, which means he's created his own version of money that he controls. And the value of that currency is predicated on the fact that he's Satoshi Nakamoto, and he's gone to court and gone to lengths of harassing and ruining people's lives to defend that. And the Bitcoin community fought back and took him to court. And I think, there's so many shout outs that are in store for this, like HODLNOT is a good friend of mine. He deserves a shout out. Peter McCormick deserves a shout out. I mean, all the Bitcoin core developers, those that have even maybe left Bitcoin for the time being because of how threatening this was. Chain Code Labs, who's done an incredible job funding a lot of this stuff. Jack Dorsey, another friend who, I mean, single-handedly, really, you can argue with the funding that he's devoted to this cause has maybe changed the entire trajectory of this case. So, and there's all sorts of names that I'm going to miss, but in the court hearings of, if Craig is Satoshi or not, effectively, more or less, I'm obviously leaving a lot of details out. Early emails and correspondence with Satoshi Nakamoto were presented in court to rule the case. And so these are totally new conversations between certain individuals and Satoshi from many, many, many years ago that the world had not seen yet. Is that the context you're looking for?
Yeah, no, that was great. I think of all the emails that I saw, I think one sparked a slightly interesting point of contention, actually, which I admittedly did not expect. Although I think that upon doing my own investigation myself, I think it makes a ton of sense. But there was an email basically stating that a 2,608 euro deposit was made into an account, and if you were able to essentially just figure out what day and what account that money went into, that you could figure out who Satoshi was. It was a way to dox whoever this person might have been. And then that caused an interesting, I would say, like, just I mean, people were pissed, basically, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was a weird episode. There's not a ton of new topics outside of this one, and I know my dad and I are pretty upset. I'm pretty pissed off. And I mean, just kind of a little disheartened by the Bitcoin community, to be totally candid. You guys gotta stop speculating on who Satoshi is. You gotta stop that shit. It's so fiat of you. It's childish. It's it is. I mean, it's so fiat. You sound like a bunch of frat brothers trying to social climb up the curve. You gotta cut that shit out. It's so childish. It's also extremely fucking dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. I know my parents have had the pleasure of getting to meet Fran Finney, Hal's wife, and it is terrifying the amount of shit that she's had to go through even before this. It is so dangerous to put someone in that position to be the creator of Bitcoin and potentially the world's first trillionaire. And then on top of that, just the disrespect to the guy or girl or they group, whatever, that clearly only wanted one thing. They only wanted to be anonymous. Clearly. When did Satoshi Nakamoto ever ask for anything else from us? Right? Bitcoin was a gift to enrich humanity. And shitcoins are to enrich a small group of people, right? That's the whole thing. If this was a shitcoin and it was, you guys want to go smear and attack Vitalik, I'm never really for destruction of another human. But if someone's launching something to enrich themselves and you think they're being malicious or deceiving, that's a totally different ballgame. This person gifted humanity with something, and everyone listening to this podcast probably gained an immense benefit from it. And the one fucking thing that they wanted is to just be left alone and just be left anonymous. And none of us have bulletproof evidence. And so all you're doing is disrespecting this person that gifted us something so incredible. You're endangering other people and you're acting like fucking fiat. It's disgusting. So it just kind of pisses me off. I'm glad there was a lot of people in the community that were outraged and it's just kind of disheartening. I was like, man, we got a halving coming up. Price action's fun. first halving with an ETF. I mean, my company's
I
doing
can't
great.
believe that's really your most popular topic in your Q&A, and not the halving. What do you guys, I mean, you're gonna have to wait another 4 years before you can discuss, right, what type of impact, a new issuance halving is going to have. And instead we're going to, just talk about trivia about Craig Wright or I agree.
Yeah.
No, the halving's easily the most fascinating thing. I don't know. It takes, what do we got? 900. I've never understood why we don't reduce new issuance more gradually, why we have to wait once every 4 years and then take a deep breath of 50% halving. How about a quarter of that every year? How about, a more gradual ability? Because that's going to be really hard to price. Well, it's going to be fascinating. I mean, I take, what do we, 900 Bitcoin a day times wherever we are, 45, 50 grand, something like that. It takes about $45 million in new money to maintain this current price. And I don't see any reason to believe that amount of new money isn't going to continue to flow in at minimum. I mean, it's
Of
enough
course
to
not.
increase. And how that's going to manifest itself, I don't know. Like, that I think is a far more interesting subject. But
Yeah, I don't know.
how
I
many
feel
spaces, how British people format paragraphs versus versus people from California. I just don't find that interesting compared to price.
yeah, it's just and I'd
And
like
you're
to
right,
think,
dangerous.
yeah, dangerous, disrespectful to the person that gifted us this thing, all of us. It was the most fair monetary issuance ever. It was not to enrich themselves. They just wanted to be left alone. But yeah, I don't know. I assume that there's new people to the space. And so maybe with a more optimistic tone, this is, an opportunity for people to learn too, because this has happened. Obviously not, these emails haven't leaked, but I mean, Dad, we've seen a cajillion Satoshis pop up over the years and
Right.
people that try and take directive control over this thing. And it's really the worst. I will say there's a story that, Dylan and I can relate to, that I share this just to try and give perspective. When we were flying home from Miami after the El Salvador announcement, was the first time in my career that I had ever started to get serious threats, or people sending me messages like, I wouldn't walk around Chicago alone if I were you, and shit like that. And I checked in. I was just scared out of my fucking mind. I'd never experienced anything like that. And I checked in to a hotel under a different name and just trying to get my bearings and understand what the fuck's going on with all of this stuff. I couldn't imagine if people on Twitter were like, oh, I think he's in that hotel, or oh, I think his UTXOs are over here, right? Can you imagine if someone was like, oh, that anonymous guy on Twitter, oh no, he's got this amount of Bitcoin and it's all stored over here. He puts his private key under that mattress. Fuck off. What are you guys doing? I mean, it's just so anti to the whole protocol, the whole project, the whole thesis. So, I really just hopefully self-reflection moment. It's just so dangerous too. I think we've all been in a place where within Bitcoin that we want some anonymity, some privacy, and some support from the community. And so it's just heartbreaking. I don't know, because I know, I have relationships with some folks that get impacted by this stuff through whether it's the Craig Wright case, like everyone knows how close I am with Peter McCormick. The whole thing. It's just, you want support from the community that's on the same team. And we really need to keep that in mind. The reaction was, in my opinion, beyond uncalled for. And we got to drop that shit. I don't know, Dad, if you have what's your favorite I'm Satoshi, or I lead Bitcoin, or that guy is Satoshi story over the last 11 years.
Oh, I mean, look, I'm talking to you in front of a Mac product, right? One of the most legendary companies, and probably one of the most valuable companies ever created, right? If it turns out, right, through 20 years hence, through the 30 or 40 years, however long I've been using Mac products, that actually wasn't Steve Jobs' he kind of was coattailing somebody else. But that make any difference whatsoever? It's useful. It works. It's software. It's a tool, right? And it's also kind of sort of unrecognizable from when it launched, right? Haven't there been enormous, I don't know, you tell me, you're the developer of, different features and patterns, usage patterns, everything. So no, I can't imagine that would affect my stance towards Bitcoin, how I trade it, how I plan on using it. When doxing identities is pointless.
Yeah. My favorite, as far as, Bitcoin, does the creator matter? Can it change? My favorite analogy is chess. Everyone knows I'm a chess player, but imagine if I were playing you in a game of chess and you were kicking my ass and you had taken my queen or something. And then all of a sudden I take my pawn and start moving it like a queen and checkmate. Well, what would your response be? You'd be like, well, what the fuck was that? That's not part of the rules. And if I were to say, oh, shoot, I'm sorry, did I not mention I'm the creator of chess? Because I'm the creator of chess, my pawns are going to start to be able to move like queens. And I'm going to effectively change the game in my benefit. You would say, I assume, well, we're just not playing chess anymore. Maybe that's Jack's chess or light chess or Ethereum chess. That's not chess. The rules of chess are beyond the inventor. They live in the ether that is. And there's a consensus protocol of how pawns move and how queens move. And if you want to create your own board game, good luck getting people to adopt that, especially if it's in your own self-interest and serves you in particular, where you get to create the monetary supply or you get to move your pawns in certain ways that I don't. But I'm here to play chess, which is a timeless game that is now way bigger than whoever the fuck. If someone came out when I was playing online and said, hey, I created chess, I would say, well, I appreciate it, I guess, but I don't give a shit. It's your move. I don't care. So I don't know. There's so many similarities too of Bitcoin and chess, but yeah, no one, it doesn't matter at all. If some Satoshi were to come out and say, I like the number 121 million instead of 21 million, but I'm sorry, go fork it. Good luck selling your shit coin. I don't care. So I don't know. I don't know. I was trying to egg you on, Dad, to tell some of the stories. I remember Dorian Nakamoto. So for those that don't know, this is fucking insane. For those that don't know, there's a sweet man whose name is Dorian Nakamoto, right? And was it Newsweek, the publication? It was so embarrassing. Newsweek just researched on the internet, I assume, or some index of names, Nakamoto as the last name, found some Asian guy named Dorian, and then go up because everyone thinks that Satoshi's Asian and last name is Nakamoto. You created Bitcoin and just utterly harassed this poor guy. His
middle name? Is he Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto, right? Yeah.
Is that, yeah. And
that's a coincidence though. I mean,
for sure. I mean, no doubt. But I remember, so when was that? Was that 2000?
Yeah, the humiliating part is that the journalism she did to confirm his identity was laughable. She pretty much just shouted at him as he was passing on the sidewalk, right? Are you? And he said, I don't want anything to do with that. And she said, well, he doesn't want anything to do with it anymore. Well, that implies that at one point he had, and that coincides with Satoshi announcing that he's moved on to other things. I swear to God, that was journalism. I don't have anything to do with that. Okay, so Satoshi? That was the worst. That was just humiliating.
Wasn't he like, hey guys, to cure all the speculation here, like, I'm not even a software engineer. It's like, I don't write code.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's something Satoshi would say.
It was
like, I'm being serious.
It was March 2014. So Mt. Gox had crashed, Silk Road had been shut down. That bear market bottomed out in 15, and that halving was in 16. So this was, really, down, sideways, dark bear market times back in that cycle. and Newsweek comes out. Yeah, it was some lady that was just harassing this poor guy that had fuck all to do with Bitcoin. But the reason I like this story is, what did the Bitcoin community do? We supported him. We donated to him. We funded him. We invited him to meetups, and we just cheered him up and took care of the guy. And we told Newsweek, back off. No one gives a fuck who Satoshi is. In fact, Satoshi doesn't want anyone to give a fuck who Satoshi is. So Newsweek lady, back off. And okay, Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto, clearly you don't know what Bitcoin is, but in case you're curious, here's some donations. Here's a wallet. Here's a few sats. Here's a meetup that you can come in. And I actually, hold on, this will be fun. I have a painting that I think, Dad, you paid 6 Bitcoin for, of the guy. And so that's it's my favorite, oh, look, we found Satoshi bullshit, because that was an awesome way for the community to respond and to show what Bitcoiners are all about. I'm going to go grab the painting. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Dad.
No, I thought Andreas did a great job. I think he was kind of he started fundraising and just trying to basically say, we're sorry for what you got put through.
Don't you think a guy who is as sophisticated as he is about his, or her anonymity, wouldn't elect to use their middle and last name?
Yeah, no, that was
like, oh man, I wonder who created Dylan Lito, and it could be McDavid Lito. Like, it's like the most. Oh man, you're the one who cracked the case. Clearly, he was just using his middle and last name. Anonymity solved for.
Yeah, here's you guys want to see so what is 6 Bitcoin right now? $300,000. You guys want to see a $300,000 painting? No, the exchange rate at the time was like, I don't know when this painting was bought. So this is why you don't spend Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen. But this is what 6 Bitcoin looks like. And there is the man. There's Dorian. So it's a nice painting. I've got all sorts of, you could see the Bitcoin 50 for the initial block reward 50. It's great. I have some funny Dylan stories that I've told before about this painting, actually. Maybe they're worth telling. I can't tell if you're going to
not here. They're not.
No, not on this
not
podcast.
Here, not.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
no.
if you guys are really curious about the story of Dylan and this painting, you should ask in Q&A, so he's forced to spill it. But this is what I'm talking about when it comes to the Bitcoin community. We told Newsweek to back off. It doesn't matter who Satoshi is. We really don't want to go down that path. And the fact that you harass someone innocent, well, maybe we'll take them in with welcoming arms and make them a Bitcoiner and just cool art. So that's my favorite Who is Satoshi memory, and how the Bitcoin community responded. So hopefully we can be thoughtful. Hopefully you guys can understand how dangerous it is to imply that even if Satoshi isn't with us anymore, they've got family. And it's just really, really not okay.
So I think the group can come to consensus and agree that it doesn't matter who Satoshi is, but I'm trying to figure out a different word for matter, but let's say it came out, and I'm not going to speculate on any individual for the reasons that we've all talked about and seen and heard about. The collateral damage it causes is immense, and people should be mindful of that when they speculate on these things. Would it matter at all if it was like a group came out that it was the NSA or the DOJ or the Kremlin, or, I mean, would that matter at all?
No. Well, matter as far as what? Like, it would, I guess it would be relevant because human beings are curious and stuff, but would it matter as far as Bitcoin being good money? No. Like I said, if you came over to play a game of chess and you said, hey, I created chess, so all my pawns act like queens, which is the most powerful piece on the board, I'd say, well, I don't want to play Dylan's chess. I want to play chess. I don't give a fuck that you created it.
Hey, where are you guys broadcasting for the halving event? Are you going to try to be live? Are you going to be at at a
Hot,
top of a waterfall in El Salvador, a hydroelectric. We're here at the top of the world's largest hydroelectric Bitcoin mining energy producer, counting down till we get to the halving block.
yeah,
Wait, so
hard pivot.
you brought this up last podcast, and it was actually I was pretty interested in it from a conceptual standpoint, but I feel like this group should broadcast live while it's
Yeah,
happening.
that's what I'm saying. Are you guys going to be on location somewhere? Are you going to be in El Salvador?
I got no plans. I know that there is a event in El Salvador, but I don't know. I haven't decided if I'm gonna go or not. Do you want to go?
I want to trade. I mean, that, like I said, y'all are going to have to wait another 4 years before you get to trade. I've traded right through 2 of these things already. I mean, I just find it fascinating. We've been through the whole thing. Why you have to take such a deep breath every 4 years? I don't know. It coincides with United States election cycles. I don't know. It coincides with Olympics are every 4 years. I don't know why he chose 4 years and why you have to take such a deep breath. Why you don't get a more gradualist supply reduction, 1/4 of that every year or even more minimal. It's going to be a fascinating challenge. And I don't know how many of your listeners have tried to trade through one of them before, but right. I'd say the consensus is pretty solid that people think this market has priced it in, right? I mean, isn't that kind of the market's mature enough? There's enough Wall Street here so that, and we've been through several of them since it's been a reasonably mature asset that's already priced in, right? I don't know about that. I don't know. Like I say, markets tend to price things. Yeah, of course. Of course, I know. On the average crop year that row crops are going to be under pressure in the fall because we're bringing more supply to market. But we already knew that, so it's already, you already price it differently. And I just think it's for someone to just watch markets. It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
For someone who trades, so like me, for example, I buy Bitcoin, I hold it. I've traded it before. I fucking suck at it. It's basically a way to I might as well just give my Bitcoin away if I pick up any trading apps myself. So I've learned the hard way. I buy it and I hold it. Do you think that this halving will be unique from a trading perspective? Will it be more difficult with institutional money and hedge funds and high frequency trading firms? I mean, has it become more difficult for you to trade Bitcoin or?
Oh yeah, my God. I told you when I first started trading Bitcoin, there wasn't really Bitcoin Twitter. It was more Reddit, right? It was Our Bitcoin is where people would post videos or updates or, new features or something. And there would literally be threads on Our Bitcoin about where to place your stops. Where are you guys placing your stops? Oh, there's good support here. Like, you guys are seriously advertising where for people like me to just go stop hunting all day long. It was it was and we didn't know the regulatory environment. When I first started trading, we didn't know how it was taxed. I was thinking ordinary income, cap gains. Nobody knew. And I remember the first conference going around and asking that question. And even vendors would be like, Bill, the IRS doesn't know what a Bitcoin is. And I go, yeah, they're going to figure it out. They're going to figure it out pretty quickly. Yeah, that's really the main change, I think. Well, we also didn't have any of the resources. If you wanted to learn, you pretty much had to go to local Bitcoins to build your position and Bitcoin meetups to ask questions. There just weren't a lot of the resources. There were Andreas YouTube videos, but that was about it.
I remember like Monday Night Football, you would always trade Bitcoin on your iPad. And yeah, I mean, back in the day, I mean, not to show you off or whatever, but the way you used to talk about it, you would casually be like, all right, this guy, this wall here or this bid over here, these guys have no idea that this is coming. And you would just casually make money and trade against these guys on your iPad when we would watch Monday Night Football. And I know nowadays, I mean, there's
Thank
like
you.
Don Wilson and fucking all these guys are you
A
know,
lot of guys come
executing,
out of Chicago.
yeah, Sailor's got $1 billion that what does he say? He buys every millisecond or something. It's totally different. But yeah.
Yeah, I imagine trading against Don Wilson's a little bit different than trading against Dylan Lito. I'm I'm not very good at it.
Oh no, it was very much, well, just if you think about how it was introduced and how it propagated and everything, it did not come with a lot of credibility. It came up through really through Silk Road was the first decent use case, or beating capital controls is the only time, you would hear about it. That was one when it started hitting my radar, was the Cyprus, when um, wealthy Cypriots are trying to exit their, defunct banking system, and they were getting, I think they call it haircuts. So they're basically just charging you for keeping your money in a bank. And how do you get it out? Get out of the banking system. They were using, Bitcoin to circumvent sanctions, and of course using Bitcoin to buy drugs, really. I mean, that was the first two use cases. And so, yeah, nobody, whenever you try to enthuse anyone about Bitcoin, you would always get that eye roll shrug. Yeah, no, yeah, not really interested in drug use. I'm like, no. Whole lot more going on here. But that was the uphill that you had to climb back then, because even announcing the subject, was immediately, made you suspect. And that
Yeah.
that changed. I don't know. I mean, the market, when did this it start becoming, like right now, anytime you turn on financial cable, there's probably a ticker in the right-hand corner,
Yeah, but it's always kind of like same story, different room. I don't know. What is there a saying that goes something like that? It's the same, like, yes, that was true. But now there was someone I was with, some guy I'd never met before in my life until last night, and he's like, yeah, I'm in finance. Like, oh, really? What does that mean? We're all in finance. We all use money. And he's like, I help manage 401k portfolios. That's what I work for a company that does that. I'm like, oh, okay. So, you guys probably aren't big on Bitcoin, right? You can't take risk. You got to just find the least risky assets. So no longer bonds. So I don't know what you pour your client money into, but you can't be bonds anymore. And his was sounded exactly like you said, but you were talking a la 2013, right? But he said the same thing. He was like, yeah, well, Bitcoin's, it's kind of risky. It's kind of tainted. It's kind of like for, not everyone's Michael Saylor that's kind of cooped up out of his mind over there, ranting about energy. I got to manage 401ks. I can't touch that thing. So it's kind of same story, different room. Is like, yes, there was a crowd that was like, oh, well, I don't do heroin, so I'm not into Bitcoin. Okay. And then it kind of graduated up and graduated up. And now it's at the point where the guys that used to buy bonds can't buy those anymore. You got crushed, and are looking for something else. It's the same thing though. It's kind of the same recycled, like, that's how risk reward works though, is obviously if everyone understood it and everyone got it, then there would be no reward. There's a direct relationship between how many people think you're crazy versus how big the upside is. That's so it's recycling the narrative, but the people that think you're crazy are just of different magnitude. Now people that manage 401ks think I'm crazy. Oh, okay. That's much better than every single person that I'd ever met in my entire life.
everyone.
Yeah. So you're making progress, but I think it's the same. It's always the same thing, in my opinion. I couldn't possibly stomach that volatility. Well, then you can't possibly want to be rich, because volatility works both ways. If you want volatile upside and own big houses and go on nice vacations, there's no way to get really far up without it being volatile. So I guess you just want to be poor forever, right? It's just like people don't get it. But I don't know. That's actually what I think is probably the most fascinating thing about Bitcoin is, it's one thing to say, to have to admit that you're wrong on any topic. Like, even if I'm like, Duke basketball is going to go to the Final Four this year, and we kind of stink. The Shire era is making me a little nervous, and we don't. it's of course hard to say, you know what, I was wrong. My convictions were wrong. My beliefs were wrong. My opinions were wrong on any topic. That's difficult. But what makes Bitcoin, in my opinion, especially difficult is you have to say, I was wrong. And oh, by the way, I I should have been rich, but now I'm poor. That's the hardest part about it, in my opinion, is all of these people. Seriously, that's why I think people like Rubini or what, yeah, that's his name, right? Like that Peter Schiff. I think that's the most difficult part. It's difficult to say, oh shit, I was wrong about eating steak. I didn't realize that eating meat's actually good for you and that, eating eggs and natural organic foods is actually good for you, that Beyond Beef is, that's always hard no matter what, but it's doubly as hard to say, I was wrong. And oh, by the way, being wrong cost me about $1 billion. I should be rich, and now I'm really poor, and I'm never going to be able to afford a Bitcoin. That's why I also think it's fascinating to watch the thing. Bitcoin's the most humbling teacher of all time because it forces a human to do what's arguably the most difficult thing ever, in my opinion. I don't know, over the years. That's an insight I've had. It's the hardest, but you really got to suck up.
Do you think if you're that wrong about something in such a monumental, I mean, that is a monumental fuck up. To miss the greatest wealth transfer of all time and declare it dead and then watch it happen in real time is just a monumental point in time. You can stop and say, that was a fuck up. Do you think that strengthens your conviction though? In the do you just double, you are so wrong that it forces you to double down in life? I mean, how are you reasonably Peter Schiff? You've seen this as long as you have, and you're still like,
yeah, eventually,
no, it's not.
Eventually it does. But you have to turn that corner. Like, I think Bitcoin, when it comes to Bitcoin reshaping the entire fabric of society, I truly believe that. I truly believe that Bitcoin allows people to think longer term, lowers their time preference. I truly think that Bitcoin turns people into eternal optimists as opposed to persistent pessimists. And so, yeah, you got to turn that corner of being a pessimist, of no, everyone else is wrong. They just haven't realized it yet. Bitcoin hasn't gone to zero yet. If you can turn the corner and become an internal optimist and think for the long term and be like, wow, I was wrong. That sucks. I could be a billionaire, but because I was so wrong, I'm not. It teaches you such humility. And I talked about this in one of the other episodes, is that every single 10 minutes, everyone in the world bows down to this protocol. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're Trump, Putin, the three of us, every single 10 minutes, if you disobey the rules, your wealth is gone. You follow the fucking rules. If you're mining Bitcoin and you want to say, oh, I found a new block. By the way, the supply of Bitcoin's 42 million. You're not getting jack dick. So it doesn't matter who you are. Seriously, it teaches true humility. I mean, my favorite quote I've ever said was, Bitcoin can change the world because the world cannot change Bitcoin. It is something that you can't manipulate your way out of. You cannot argue your way through. It's a brute force cement rock that's never going to change and teaches you ultimate humility. So if you can turn the corner and become an optimist and forgive yourself for your mistakes, and believe in a long-term future, then yeah, of course, I think that's where Bitcoiners are born. But it is, in my opinion, the hardest. It's like therapy. It really is. Like becoming a Bitcoiner is therapeutic, because you have to forgive yourself and say, I was wrong. I could have been a lot richer, a lot better looking, a lot healthier if I was more open-minded, if I was more humble, if I was more curious, if I was more genuine, if I was a better person, but I wasn't. And I have to admit that. And now embarks the journey of me becoming a better man. That's, to me, what becoming a Bitcoiner is. And it's such a difficult, I mean, if that wasn't such a difficult problem, the world would be in a much better place. I don't know. That's my opinion on it. But eventually everyone becomes a Bitcoiner and Bitcoin fixes the world. That's how I think this goes.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I told you, when I was running the brokerage firm, you would participate sometimes in studies that would try to analyze exchange data, open interest data, and to determine exchanges class traders three ways for margin and risk purposes, right? You're commercial, you're actually, you're exporting or farming or something like that. You're a speculator, small speculator, or you're a professional like hedge fund. And those are different margin treatments for all that. And you try to figure out which of those groups was making was positioned better because, well, you start from, you've heard the cliche, whatever, 10% of the people make 90% of the money. In my experience, that it may even be an underestimation, right? 10% of the people make 99% of the money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's just, it's a difficult thing to trade retail speculation with that amount of margin and that amount of leverage available. It's just hard to go up against Don Wilson and those things. But oddly, if you take a just top-down snapshot of the open interest, and you will find that the people that make 90% of the money are on the right side of the market 53% of the time, right? Almost vanishingly close to throwing a dart at the wall, right? That's statistically close enough to 50-50 to makes you think, wait a minute, these customers that heard a tip at the water cooler and were, opening up, a $5,000 First American account just to buy a call option on something, they're on the right side of the market as often as professional traders, well, within 3%.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the takeaway is the skill is managing the position, not spend less time, but spend your time, do your homework, find what the market you want to speculate in, but really spend less time on that part of it and more time on managing the position once you've got it. Because like I said, you can be on the right side of the market 50% of the time and still take a lot of money out of markets if you know, right, risk management.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about all the people in Bitcoin that, because of everything we just talked about, whether your ego, humility,
Right.
or just the notion of trying to change Bitcoin, loses you an enormous amount of wealth. I mean, Roger Ver had what, 350,000 Bitcoins at one point. And I don't want to speculate on how much. I'm sure he's fine, but I mean, what a Jihan Wu, Craig Wright. I mean, well, I don't know, all these big egos that, you could have the initial thesis right, but if you don't manage the position well, and to me, that just means Bitcoin, the world cannot change Bitcoin. So Bitcoin changes you. You don't change Bitcoin. That's what we need out of a money, is something that's so cemented into the ground that you can't change the supply, you can't change the consensus rules, so that society can start to change around something that can so purely capture our, Saylor calls it monetary energy, our contributions to society. Our lives need to be somehow captured in monetary form so that we can exchange them, persist them, hand them down to generations. And if you've got a cement rock that's going to live forever, then that's what changes you. You don't change it. So anytime you walk up to Bitcoin and you look it in the eyes and say, you're not good enough for me, I want to change you, that's how you get wrecked. That's how you get fucked. That's how you fuck your position. Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't know that stat, that retail is, what'd you say, 53%? Yeah, that's good enough to be right, as long as you can hang in the ring and manage the
Commercials.
position.
The guys taking retail, would always lose money. But even the professionals, you got better research, you got 24-hour desk, you got industry contacts, and you're really only beating my customers, right? We're only beating, my coin toss by 3 percentage points. I always found that statistic amazing. Every time, guys would, I told you guys run a branch office or something, would like, can you talk to some of our traders? Can you come, right? We didn't call them meetups, but often traders know other traders, right? And I get there and the sales rep would just start rolling his eyes. Can you not talk just about risk management? Don't you have any exciting rags to riches stories and stuff? Yeah. Well, look, guys, Bitcoin, right, went from zero to, tens of thousands of dollars. Obviously, there's a lot of money available if you can speculate there, but it has also lost over 80% of its value, at least twice since I've been trading it, right? 1,100 down to 170, and then 20,000 to 3,000. you better pay some attention to risk management if you're going to survive a 20,000 to 3,000 and you're an active trader, right? You're not just, DCAing your way in, but actually trying to speculate. Yeah, of course. Which makes my talks kind of tend to be a little too much about, risk management, frump, and yeah, there's plenty of excitement here. There's a halving coming up, but yeah. That was always how I was taught. Enjoy the party, Billy, but you got to stay close to the exits. Have as much fun. There's more people making more money, but yeah. Where do you want me to start? The 87 stock market crash, he wiped out 20% of that market in not only one day, but for all intent and purposes, like the last 90 minutes did the bulk of it. I mean, that's terrifying if you're using leverage. 6 months later, the worst drought in generations, right? The 88 drought doubled the price of grains, and then it rained. It went right back down. And so, yes, I'm definitely more of a risk management and less of a let's get people fired up about $288,000 Bitcoins, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, on that topic too, Bitcoin is the best investment when it comes to, well, at one point you were talking about liquidity there. Like, the regional banks in America are all insolvent because a lot of their balance sheet is real estate, like commercial real estate. And if you got commercial real estate, you can't get liquid. So if you need to meet a customer's withdrawal of your bank and their deposit is in a building, yeah, sorry, I don't got your deposit, right? So the fact that Bitcoin is 24/7 liquid, it might be the most liquid thing in the world, probably outside of, I don't know, like US dollar cash form or something. But I mean, Bitcoin's got to be up there as one of the most liquid instruments on planet Earth. So liquidity is never going to be a problem. In my opinion, risk management goes back into what I was just saying of humility, is living within your means. You cannot blow your position unless you're levered, unless you're exceeding your means, unless you're living outside of yourself. If you can and Bitcoin teaches you this, to think long term. I said on an earlier podcast here that I don't eat as much steak anymore. I don't mind ground beef. It's because right now in this highly inflationary time, when I walk into Whole Foods, I can get a pound of ground beef for $5 and a ribeye costs me $30. So that's a week's worth of meals packed into one decision. And so it lowers your time preference, really allows you to value things properly and live within your means. And that's the best way. If I'm a normal guy, that's the best way to manage your position is, if Bitcoin price falls 80%, you're going to be okay because you were never reliant on that for your lifestyle. I don't know. That's the name of the game, because liquidity is never going to be a problem. It's not as if, because listen, there are illiquid investments that are good. Like venture capital is probably the most famous one. You invest in a startup and you got at least 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years before you can hit secondary markets, or that company's going to IPO, or you get acquisition or something. Those are highly illiquid. So you got VCs that on their balance sheet, our investment in this company is now worth $80 million. Yeah, but if you needed 1 penny, you can't get it. So so Bitcoin's so liquid, which is fascinating. So the biggest part about managing your position is not getting a big ego. It's just when the thing rallies, take a deep breath, maybe take some off, whatever, pay your house in full in cash. I don't know, Dad, because you taught me all this stuff, but that to me it's all about humility. My favorite Arthur Hayes quote is, profess your sins to the Lord, Satoshi. Profess your sins. Say, Lord Satoshi, I for have sinned. I got cocky. I got bottle service once when Bitcoin rallied a bunch. Lord Satoshi, I thought I was better than everyone else. Lord Satoshi, I thought Bitcoin was going to go to zero. Lord Satoshi, I thought I was going to get the most chicks. And you profess your sins to the Lord, and you put your monetary energy into Bitcoin, and you perform humility, and you profess the fact that you have a low time preference and you want the best for the world. And then Bitcoin forgives all your sins and just pumps forever and allows you to be part of the greatest thing that's probably ever happened to money ever for our species. That's my favorite That's my favorite. So I don't know. Do you agree that that's how you manage position, is just don't exceed your means, remind yourself that it's liquid, because you're always near the exit.
Yeah, I mean, if you're if you're gonna use leverage and trade more aggressively, then you need to be there. I mean, you have to do that for a living, I think. I don't
Yeah, it's
think you
professional.
can,
Yeah.
right, do that on your coffee break and check in. Other than that, right, DCA. Um, I mean, this is uncharted territory, right? We are um I think, one more halving for all intent and purposes, where you're at 19 out of 21 of them, right? Pretty much. Where were we? 18 and a half.
Yeah. Out of 21 million coins. Yeah.
Yeah. And, one more halving, it's really going to be hard to build a material position out of new issuance, right? And
Yeah.
it's, and nobody has ever seen, like I said, I've never seen anything like this. That's still that's the quote from our last podcast, right? Get the price of anything high enough, you'll find more supply. Get the price of Bitcoin high enough, yeah, you find more supply of shit coins. You can't find any more supply.
We'll get the new, every
You'll get more
halving.
shit coins for sure.
Yeah, we had a
You'll get more
halving.
Super Bowl ads, right?
Yeah, you got a halving, you got Ethereum. Then we had another halving, we got Solana. So after this one, I don't know what super fast smart contracting shit coin we'll get after this one. But yeah.
ICOs, IEOs, NFTs, some 3-letter acronym will come around to siphon money away, and before we blink, it'll all be gone.
You guys think that this halving, though, is more like a crossing of the chasm, to your point, Dad, that after this one, it's going to be only large amounts of capital that could build a position. Like it's hard for me to imagine that after this one, you're going to be allowed to go to college, graduate, make 85K a year, find a place in a big city that allows you to have excess cash to invest and slowly build yourself up to, a quarter of a coin or half a coin or something. To me, this is kind of the crossing of the chasm where after this cycle, you were either on the right side of history or, you're washed into.
There's so many. This is the first. I mean, Bitcoin is now a feature of an upcoming presidential election. So, in addition, I know everybody likes price forecasting with technicals, but I don't care. Draw as many lines on a chart as you want. But first things first, I got to know who's in charge of the government, because that's going to be a large factor, right? You've got Bitcoiners that might be in Treasury or might be close to the White House.
That's fucking crazy. Yeah. I mean, I met
a long way from Elizabeth Warren, right?
Yeah. Well, who do you I don't never mind. I don't want to get political. I'm just such a not political guy, or whatever the correct way to say that is. That it's not even worth. But I met Vivek Ramaswamy in Miami at the last Bitcoin conference. And he's clearly a good talker and good at being whoever you need him to be, depending on who's he's standing in front of. But
who was he standing in front of? What do you mean you met while you guys in an elevator or something?
He's standing in front of me. No.
Really?
He wanted, what was it, Dylan? Did he want to meet me, or we had a mutual connection? But I met him. Maybe we should have him on the podcast. We should ask if he would come on. But he was very up to date with Bitcoin. His new Austrian School of Economics. I mean, very much. So yeah, I think unless Biden's administration gets reelected, I don't know if it's either RFK or Trump. RFK, Trump, Biden, right? Is that, I swear to God, I don't follow this shit. Is that the options at this point? Do you guys know?
Right. It looks like same old, right? We're going to get Trump, Biden again.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Major party.
Does that what it's look like? Okay. Yeah. So obviously Biden has been the biggest disaster for our space. I mean, clueless. I mean, doesn't have an idea about how anything is working. Monetary policy, like the government spending, everything has been disaster. So, but Trump just mentioned Bitcoin. Did you guys see that? Yes. It was a very, Trump got asked about
what did he
Bitcoin.
say about it?
It was he said, I'm going to not say
Something like here to stay. It's,
yeah.
the
Yep.
fact that it's durable is notable. The fact that it's still working, does what it says it's going to do, is notable, but it wasn't a big endorsement or anything.
No, but it was an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
To me, it sounded like someone clearly told him, don't poo-poo it. Because we don't want to be on the other side of it. There are voters and there's a lot of money at this point that really likes it. So he was like, yeah, it's hanging around. It's got a lot of legitimacy at this point. But then he ended by saying, what I'm really a fan of is the dollar. But it was the first time I'd ever seen
That's
him.
what everybody says. I'll tell you, I'm as close to a single issue voter, right, as there. I don't care if I disagree with you about 9 out of 10 things, but if you're going to protect this industry, that's really good enough for me, or really allow it to flourish in this country, so we don't, your company doesn't have to move, everybody doesn't have to move offshore. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get much help from them, but I know, and nobody likes to hear this, particularly your stepmom, but the best chance, if I'm a single issue voter, I'm voting for Donald Trump. He hates the IRS. He hates the IRS. Isn't that one of his first things he's going to do is fire, and Joe Biden's going to add in, there's a 10-year plan to double, right, the head count of IRS agents. And that's a material difference, guys. They're not, you don't double an agency, right, so they can all process your return quicker. There's going to be a lot more audits and a lot more scrutiny on your industry. So sorry, I know that sucks, but Bitcoiners probably should think about, voting Trump because just to tone the IRS down.
I mean, like I said, this is politics always piss people off, and I hate it because I really, truly, I honestly believe my vote is with Bitcoin. And you want to see how I vote? Look at my portfolio, which I told you guys I don't own any dollars, so I'm all in Bitcoin. Look at my time spent on this planet. It's all working on Bitcoin. Look at my day today. It's all talking about Bitcoin. That's my vote. And so, yes, if someone is going to not tax and audit the living shit out of me and support the space and allow for America to be part of what I think is going to help enrich and advance humanity, then yeah, you got my vote. I mean, but I don't know, politics, it really is just so unfortunate. The state of things is just such a divide, which I think is a cause of all the, shit money. I think the real divide is the wealth gap, is that there's no more middle class. When you inflate the money, you remove the middle class. The guy that's got a lot of money has 10 houses, and the guy that is poor can't afford one, right? So like the joke I love is Bitcoin's going to make housing affordable again, is it's going to demonetize things like real estate so that people don't use it as wealth preservation. And so the real divide in America is the fact that you either have 10 houses or you don't have one. And 10% of the population has 10 houses. And I'm exaggerating. These aren't real numbers, but you guys get the point. 10% of the population has all the assets, and 90% of the population, there's no middle class. 90% of the population is perpetually in debt forever. And then that realizes itself of when people are like, oh, you eat meat? Well, I'm a vegan. Like, whoa, I mean, I don't care that much about your diet. I don't give a shit.
We all know the answer to income inequality, right? We need more labor unions. Isn't that what our current administration wants to do, is promote unions? Are you?
Yeah, but that's I think all of the
industry thrives where unions are.
All of the divide. The divide is, to me, is like, oh, you like women? Well, I have this sexual preference. Like, well, I don't give a fuck about your sexual preference. You do whatever you want. I don't know why everyone's so pissed off. I think, and so even politics, like, you would think about voting for Trump? I don't know. I don't think about politics ever. Why would I? But I think the divide is the wealth gap, is that everyone's just pissed. You can't afford your groceries. You can't afford college. You can't afford your car. You can't afford your house. You can't afford your credit card bill. Or you're leaving your Hamptons house to go to your Miami house, to go to your mansion in Calabasas house. You're either one or the other. And for every 9 people that can't afford shit, you'll find one buddy that they know that has 10 homes. That's the problem, right?
A good way to
I,
think, you guys, with, increased IRS scrutiny and, taxation and seizure and everything else, that your generation has to worry about relocating assets offshore, or setting up, trusts or things that can't be touched and seized or even identified. And that's what Bitcoin is so great at, right? It really doesn't domicile. It's kind of funny to think that that is really kind of a different iteration of, in our generation, it wasn't a matter of, do I need to get my assets out of this country before the government takes them? Now it was, do I need to, physically get out of the country before the government takes me, right? Because we were still mandatory draft. Draft was still mandatory for me through middle school. They were still drafting. It ended by the time, I came of age, but I didn't miss by much. I missed by a couple of years. So I don't know. I like that analogy. You guys are having, you shouldn't have to discuss, do I need to re-domicile my assets and protect them from the government? No, you should be building your career. But I don't know, weird analogy. I should never have had to consider leaving the country in order to avoid, right, being shipped out. But so I guess we're making progress.
well, I was going to say, I think the fascinating political point to me was that you had two candidates in RFK and Vivek who sit on opposite sides of the aisle, but discussing Bitcoin publicly. I mean,
Yeah.
when I first found out about Bitcoin, it wasn't from either of you two. It was from, I think, like a 4chan forum, maybe.
Yeah.
And going deeper in that, it was, I mean, I remember Jack coming to college and being like, hey, man, this Bitcoin thing, it's going to be enormous. And that at the time, you mentioned this earlier, but people thought it was drug dealer money. I was people. It was the only thing I knew what it was used for. Like the only utility that I had ever seen it used for at the time was to buy drugs or whatever the fuck else you wanted off the Silk Road. And so for me to see that progression in real time, like I found out about Bitcoin, not from YouTube. I learned about Bitcoin from YouTube. And to watch the progression go from literal, like criminal, drug dealer, whatever money,
Right.
to a topic that not only one whacked out guy running for office, it was two lucid, sound potential contenders for the presidency of the United States talking about Bitcoin. I found that fascinating. And I think that,
That's why I always like
sitting
my,
on,
no, I
I
always
was
like
going to say,
that,
I
that
think sitting on
universe.
this call. Nope, you go.
Oh, sorry. No, that's no. It was always my favorite thought experiment. That I borrowed years ago. That it is. It's like the acid that spills in the science fiction movie. It's eats through the floor and then fizzles out in the basement somewhere. But consider, a universal version of that. It's not going to stop. It's going to eat whatever it touches. And what does that look like? And that history's great ideas tend to have that quality of a universal asset. So when Charles Darwin is solving, as Satoshi, is a very specific problem, right? He's solving origin of species, is solving speciation. And very quickly, whatever, he's in a court case, his ideas are in a court case in the public education system, right? It just didn't see that one coming, right? He's solving a specific problem. Satoshi is solving the double spend problem and is right quickly, you know, dragged into so many other areas, but it kind of seeps its way in, doesn't come through the front door, right? Now it's a subject of a US presidential election. Now it's the subject of Central American versus the IMF loans, right? Now it just has a way of seeping in. I know. I always like that thought experiment. The two things about, the protocol proceeding at universal asset, right, is that it's inexorable, but you don't know, it's going to affect everything, but you just don't know what that's going to look like. It's not coming through the front door. It's not going to be a typical, like, what would a typical tech innovation would, like you say, get venture capital funding and an IPO and a Wall Street backing. And, so Satoshi didn't pursue any of that, right? He just leaked it. So it has a very different way of propagating. And, I like the seeping, the way it kind of seeps in, doesn't come through the front door.
It's
But
bottoms
there you
up.
go. Now it's a presidential
Yeah.
issue. Okay. Now it's a Latin American versus IMF issue. Now it's a debt issue. Okay.
That's also what
I mean,
allows it to be bottoms up. It's,
Right.
that's exactly why. Yeah, that's also what made Bitcoin so fair. If it went through private VC and then some Wall Street firm like Goldman got to take it to the public markets, then the distribution of the cap table, so to speak, would be heavily skewed. That's what allows it to be such a grassroots movement, is that Satoshi just leaked it and distribution was going to be done through proof of work. So, get to work. If all you got is your hands, then find the next block with pen and paper. If you've got, capital or a job, then find yourself some energy. But that's what allows it to be grassroots, which is just such a juxtaposition versus everything that we see in the world today.
Yeah, and to your point of it seeping through, right? I mean, on this call, there are two people who would self-identify as single issue voters, and that issue is Bitcoin. Is there 20 in America? Is there 20 million? Will there be 200 million? I don't know, but I think the trend will continue to be, I mean, there is more than two, and I think there will be more than 2 million, and I think there will be more than 20 million. And eventually I think this becomes what you run a platform on. It has to be.
I don't know. One thing that I think you guys should toss out there, because that I don't know the answer. If anybody's got any insights, I'd ask you, like, what comes first? Nation state adoption, onboarding financial products, ETF. What nation state adoption, ETF, or a major retailer like eBay or Amazon accepting? Well, of course, it would be number three. Why in the world wouldn't it be, right? It's specifically designed for internet commercial use. I've always thought that how in the world we got a nation state to adopt and an ETF approval before most major retailers are still trying to store credit card data. I've always found weird. I think that should have been the other direction, right?
I mean, I have all sorts of expertise on this one. I think it's changing consumer behavior is immensely difficult. And working through large corporations, like, mind you, nation state adoption was a very particular nation. Working through like the bureaucracy of a big corp. I mean, a lot of the big retailers I've talked to over the years, every single quarter, the guy I'm talking to gets fired. And I'm not naming names of the retailers. No, I'm serious. They churn out and turn over. I mean, everyone's laying off everybody. There's so much layered management, split decision making, working your way up the ladder, and then changing consumer behavior is nearly impossible. And now from what I've learned, it'll maybe be one of the last things, because changing behavior of people that already have their Apple Pay is just a lot harder than an emerging country.
Yeah, but I'm not asking to change the consumer behavior. So just list it as an option. I mean, now at the bottom of it, you want to pay PayPal, debit card, and just add one more option, or scan a QR code. I don't know. I've found that weird that may as well just throw it on there. I know you talk to these retailers, and I don't think this is as true as it was, but it used to be. Bitcoiners were very loyal. They wanted to promote merchant adoption. We thought price appreciation we needed merchant adoption. I don't believe that as strongly as we used to, but that was a big thing. Go to your local grocery store, go to D&D's and tell Costa that if he accepts Bitcoin, I guarantee there's a half a dozen more loyal customers than you got right now, right? Because Bitcoiners were very loyal to merchants who adopted. I don't know. I never thought that I mean, the point is, why has major retailers not simply flipped that switch or offered it as a menu item? Yeah. Is it because of tax issues?
No, I'm telling you, it's consumer behavior. Amazon's not going to justify that, because it's going to result in no growth. I mean, these guys, it's a $1 trillion, $2 trillion company. That level of growth. I mean, Tesla had it and they took it off for some reason or the other. It's just the consumer, but it's not a big enough For El Salvador though, or for BlackRock, like how would BlackRock add another $1 trillion of assets under management? There's probably only one product that can give you that chance, and that's Bitcoin. But how is Amazon going to impress in Q2 upcoming earnings? It's not going to be through a Bitcoin option, in my opinion, from what I've learned. And because it's going to take a long time, even so you're saying one of two things. Either existing Apple Pay users are going to convert into becoming Bitcoin users, or you're saying there's going to be enough Bitcoiners to move the needle. But neither are true right now. Maybe after the next cycle, there's 50 million active US consumers that have Lightning Network wallets that are actively using them. Maybe that's a different conversation. But from my experience, like every single milestone in progress we make is 1 quarter at a time. Hey, I'm Jeff. Andy got fired. I'm taking over the project. We just finished Q&A. It just moves like a turtle because they don't have it. No, that they just don't have enough of an excuse. They don't have enough leverage to move it any quicker. I don't know. That's been my experience, but I don't know, I'd be the happiest guy in the world if someone else were able to solve it. I mean, maybe I agree with you. I've always had that opinion. If I can interoperate with my life on an open standard, I'd do great things for
The
the world.
derivative products for 10 years, for crying out loud. I mean, and anything that you can say that how slowly Amazon works. How slowly does the Chicago Board of Trade work? I mean, it's been around 150 years. There's a lot of institutional committees and slow shit in any 150-year-old institution. We've been trading it for 10 years. I don't know, I'm just surprised that Amazon, eBay, etc. haven't at least, and it's not like you got to flip a switch or change your consumers' behavior, right? Just list it as a menu option. You don't have to use it. We take cash, we'll take euros, we'll take PayPal, but if you want, just throw an extra QR code on it at the bottom of the page.
I don't disagree with you. I don't know. The free market doesn't agree with us yet. One day.
No, they don't. Didn't see that one. Did not see nation state adoption years before internet commerce adoption, but
I know. Me too. But yeah, Dill, we have some Q&A. I can't keep track of time on this thing. How long have we been going?
Probably like an hour, maybe hour or so. But yeah, I think we can wrap up and get QA. We had a few interesting questions from community. I was actually curious both your guys' answers to this question. I think I have a slightly obtuse answer. Very simple question though. Matthew Moore asks, how much is enough Bitcoin? Percentage of net worth, Bitcoin amount, one whole coin, an amount in US dollars. How do you decide? How much is enough Bitcoin?
oh, I mean, I think me and everybody else, as soon as you understand it, you just want to get as much as you can before it gets away, right? I mean,
Yeah.
as much as you can afford before the next halving.
Yeah. I mean, you can never have enough. I still think, Bitcoin's in its distribution, which I want to reiterate the last episode. If you haven't listened to it and hear my dad talk about the halving, you should. But distribution comes in two forms. One from mining, but then when you've tapped out the mining supply, so after a halving, then the rest of the distribution comes from existing holders that end up, you know what, fine. You guys got the price this high, I'll get my dream house, or I'll cover my kids' college tuition in full, or I'll finally get the Porsche I've always wanted, or I'll finally, pay off my, car loan or whatever. And so it's constantly being distributed from miners or existing holders. And so we're still in the distribution game for a few more decades of people. There's someone out there that's got 100,000 Bitcoin and they're not going to die with 100,000 Bitcoin. They're going to die with less because they're going to go trade it in for real goods. So yeah, you just try and get as many as you can out of 21 million. And then the world's stuck there. Then that's new gold rush. So I don't know, never enough.
Yeah, never enough. I feel like my obtuse answer to this question is just more than zero. Because the second you got more than zero, you realize the true answer to that question is there isn't enough. But you got to start somewhere. Get
Around
more
number,
than zero.
10%. Yeah, whatever you guys. I like the way you guys do it because that's the way. when we at First American, I think the average age of guys were in the 20s, right? Try to get them to contribute to a 401k plan or a health plan or something. They're just not thinking like that. But that's why you do it direct, direct deposits and chip away at it. So it's not really visible. It's not like the guy has to write a check or has to make a sacrifice in order to fund his retirement or his health plan, right? And that's the best way to build. I'm best way to build your Bitcoin position, right? It's not there's X amount, take 10% out of my paycheck, and I'll have a decent position in 18 months, right? I mean, chip away at it. And I think that's the best way to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
wrong way. Just get as much as you can.
And then last question, Quintonisted, if I butchered that, let me know. But Quintonisted asked, explain how Bitcoin de-escalates the scale of wars and incentivizes responsible resource allocation.
That's a good one. You want to take that one, Dad?
Wars? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think one of my favorite Saifedean thoughts is that we're living through the century of war. For the last 100 years have just been constant war, because previously, if you were a government on the gold standard and you needed to fund war, you would create a bond, and you would need the citizens to pledge their gold and fund the bond. So you would need the collective buy-in from the people to fund war. And so wars only got funded if they had real need. So if someone said, I'm going to come bomb the city of Chicago and the house that I'm sitting in now, there's going to be destroyed, I would say, all right, fair enough. Here, you could take some of my sats and you can fund the military to protect me. But if you were to say, I think this country needs a little bit more aid, then that government bond wouldn't have been funded. And so it was a really honest way. And it wasn't even through voting. It was gold. You can't print gold, right? You couldn't just go print it out of thin air, and it's distributed within the people. And so if the people truly believe they needed to be protected, then they would give you their gold. If not, then the war wouldn't have been funded. And so on the gold standard, there was far less war because you couldn't afford meaningless murdering of human beings. Nowadays, when you're not on the gold standard, you can just print the currency. And when you print the currency, you're depriving wealth from the people without their consent. And so I'm taking their wealth to fund war, whether they like it or not, because I can debase the money that they're holding. And so Bitcoin defunds war because it brings us back to something like the gold standard. It puts us on a standard of a scarce real good. And so that, if the government wants to print a bunch of dollars to fund war, well, I hold Bitcoins. So you're not taking wealth from me to go fund war. So eventually you're going to bankrupt themselves. Like right now, we've got the Fed chairman on 60 Minutes saying, well, if the government keeps this up, they're going to run themselves insolvent. So yeah, you guys want to keep going to war? Like when Janet Yellen is asked at a press conference, hey, Janet, I just checked your balance sheet. Do you really think that you could go to war in the Middle East and continue to fund Ukraine and go to World War III with Russia? And she goes, oh, yeah. What do you mean? We're the United States. Yeah, okay. Well, if all of us hold Bitcoin and none of us hold dollars anymore, you're just going to go under. You're going to default. So anyway, that's why. And so I love the Saifedean idea of we're living through the century of war because fiat allows the government to take money from us through inflation, where on a Bitcoin standard or a gold standard, it was impossible. The only war that gets funded is one that the people collectively believe needs to happen, which is very rarely would I ever want to go murder somebody, right? It would be in self-defense.
Safe's argument really, you guys are too young, but it really does echo, the Reagan era, Reagan's approach to deficits. He said he's just going to quit collecting revenue. I'm just not going to tax. I'm going to cut the hell out of taxes. So there's no revenue for y'all to keep spending. That's how we're going to get government to scale down and be responsible and balance their budget. Well, I don't know, of course, that he cut the hell out of our taxes, upper upper bracket went from 70% to 28%, I think. But government spending didn't miss a beat, right? It just ballooned the deficit.
Did you see what
That's it. If we take away the punch bowl, then you guys won't get drunk. Really? No, we took away the punch bowl.
Watch
We
this.
ran $1 trillion deficit. We just kept drinking.
did you
And
did you
that's the argument, right? If we deny these guys the means, right, to plunder with taxation and fund wars and everything, then maybe the world will get better. I don't know.
I think so. I mean, you gotta. The problem with fiat is everything is affordable. If you control the money, then you can afford whatever you want. So there's no free market constraints to anything. You could just do whatever you so please. And so if everything wasn't free, if everything wasn't on the menu, and you had to pick and choose, right? Like, do you want to fix roads? Do you want to deliver a vaccine, or do you want to give all of your money to another country that's in a war? And you got to pick one, because you don't get to just print money and debase everyone's salary to do all three, right?
Argument.
In theory.
That's the sound.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Did you
can just print it, then.
Yeah. Did you see what Bukele said in his latest speech? It was pretty. I mean, that guy says the truth out loud. He said the truth is taxation is at this point a facade to pretend like, the theory is that I pay taxes to fund my government. So I go out, I work really hard, and I take some of my hard work and I give it to the government, because the government's going to make sure my roads are smooth and the law is enforced and my kids have good schools. And he said, but at this point, with the amount of money printing, if money printing worked, they wouldn't need to tax you at all, right? If they could just print money to solve problems, then why would they need to take 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% of your income? They keep taking your income to give you the illusion that your income is going towards good acts and services. But if it was, then they wouldn't need to print money. The fact that they do both implies that the whole system is utterly and completely fucked. But if they came out and said, hey, taxes are zero, don't worry about it, then everyone would panic and say, holy shit, they're going to tarnish the dollar immediately because we're so fucked. If they did the opposite and said, we're never going to print another dollar again, we'd all be like, oh my God, I'm leaving, because they're going to tax me 98%, right? Because they're in so much debt. So Bukele was like, the fact that they kind of play both is the illusion that everything is okay. But the fact that they both exist implies that the whole thing is utterly and completely fucked. I thought it was very clever way of diagnosing the problem. It was interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, default or inflate, I don't know. Maybe debt holiday. Haven't there been historical debt jubilees or something? I don't know. There's no way out of this mess. So we're just clean slating this thing on Jan 1. I don't know.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Y'all are going to have to pay 7 to 8 or 9% more for groceries is the easiest. I mean, you just can't. Bank lines are,
yeah,
and that spirals inflation.
Should listen.
To contain it. You don't want it to hit double digits, because then it gets hard. Then, like I said, then you got to go Volcker and just put the brakes on the economy, and that. But other than that, I mean, bank lines, you saw it. I mean, that was what, 2 Fed quarter point hikes, and we started tipping financial institutions. I don't know. I think y'all are going to have to pay a little more for groceries next year. I think we're going inflation rather than
100%.
Yeah.
But they play that balance. You should watch Bukele's speech. It's pretty fascinating, because he's like, fuck these people. That like they're gonna here's what they're gonna do. They're gonna print more money. You're gonna have to pay 10%. At one point it was 10% month over month or something for your groceries, for your eggs, for your beef. And then as soon as people get, civil unrest over that, and someone's going to say, fine, I'll put a stop to inflation. And then next month they're going to raise your taxes. Right. And then they're going to, I mean, they don't have the money. And so, you're stuck in a hole. If they stop inflation, your taxes are going to be 95%. If they never tax you again, then your currency is going to be worth a piece of paper. So, or they're going to kind of dance in between the two and give you the illusion that some guy named Jerome Powell is just working. He's just working overtime. He's probably working on this Sunday, just doing all sorts of science to make sure that guy's a magician. Yeah, where'd you go to, Dylan? You went to U of I? Well, that guy, he probably went to Harvard. He's just a little smarter than you. He's probably working. He's got Excel pulled up right now. He's figuring out the exact formula to fix all of these problems and make all the money disappear.
Now we just leaked the minutes. You guys should have leaked the minutes of the upcoming Federal Reserve policy. It lasted for 3 hours. You guys want to hike anymore? No? Okay, what do you want on your pizza? That's right. That's about it. Because we ain't hiking. You're just not hiking. I mean, it's too.
Yeah. There's no science to it. All right.
Well, I don't know. What do you want to discuss? If you guys, put too much pressure on these institutions, versus what's the alternative? If the alternative, right, like we say, if the alternative is a double-digit inflation that is going to require, that Volcker-esque put the brakes on thing, then yeah, or you might want to tilt a little more towards inflation rather than solvency right now. But I just don't think that's the case. I think solvency is you just don't want to play games with such an insolvent financial system.
Bank of America is technically insolvent right now. Well, my favorite, they are, because what's that rule in banking that you don't have to mark your long duration instruments to market? So if you
mark
actually
to the model,
if you actually had to mark
it or just post it at your purchase price or market to some model.
But it's I mean, risk is fully institutionalized at this point. I got that from you, where this risk is not your counterparty risk with Bank of America isn't with Bank of America. It's with the United States of America. Every single, when you open it, that's not how it's supposed to work. If I give a loan to Dylan, my counterparty risk should be Dylan. It shouldn't be the United States, because then if Dylan fucks up, then everyone in the United States gets fucked. That doesn't seem very fair now, does it? But that's how it works. So every new Bank of America account that's opened is putting all of us at risk of being fucked. And so, yeah, my favorite is, what is it? Freddie Mae, Fannie Mac. Their assets to liabilities is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got like 1% of assets to the liabilities. So yeah, that thing is just fully institutionalized. Either the United States of America is going to like continue to stand straight, and that means everything's going to be inflated, or it's going to collapse. But anyway.
Yeah, I told you. Well, last time we went through this, when I had a small counted E-Trade, and during the 2009, during the financial crisis, I remember calling Uncle Tom, call my brother. I go, "What are you hearing?" I don't know. And he said, "Well, I don't have a lot here, but I got to close. I got to move out of E-Trade." And he goes, "Well, I mean, it's got an E in its name, so yes, you need to get out of it." And I was standing right on that intersection, right, Central and Green Bay, and I was like, "Well, it depends which light turns, because if that one goes green first, I'm going Bank of America. That one goes green, I'm going to Chase." And because one of them's got America in its name, and the other one, I think, pretty much runs the Treasury, right? Whoever's running Treasury is a Chase veteran. And so I ended up at Chase just because, you're scared. Nobody likes that. I thought, the smaller brokerages, I thought E-Trade was doing a great job, but that was, everyone was so scared in that crisis. No, that's what I tell your viewers. The next blow up, the next bank lines, the next flare up, you're at that intersection where you can go chase Bank of America, gold, or Bitcoin, depending. That's kind of like your four-way intersection going into the next financial crisis. I think all are valuable. I do not think this government would let major, financial institutions impede, investors. And, they're always protect real estate, right? So you protect that, those are all your voters. So I think the outlet for all, the coming indebtedness and stress is going to be inflation.
Yeah. Bitcoin's the best expression of fiat debasement.
Correct.
All right. Well, we only got through 2 questions there. We ranted a little bit, but are we wrapping, Dylan?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. As always, leave us comments, give us feedback. We're new to the podcasting game. I'm not a podcaster. I'm a CEO and a founder. none of us really know too much what we're doing, but we really enjoy it and we love sharing it with you guys. Like I said, Dylan's my best friend. Willie, Bill, what do you want to go by, Dad?
Yeah, Bill.
That guy is my dad. So these are conversations we have anyway. We love recording them. We love sharing them with you guys. So just give us feedback, tips, what topics and questions you have for us to talk about next time. And every Monday, we're going to keep this show on the road for decades to come because Bitcoin's not going anywhere.
I agree. This is it's like riding the metro to work, right? Because anybody, if you're on the 6 a.m. train, right, then you're probably in the financial markets, right? Not that many things open at 7 o'clock, right? So, riding the metro, or you're just sitting around with people who are going over their positions, reading news wires and getting ready. And I think that's really, a fun way to run this podcast. Like a bunch of traders getting to work on Monday, going over, that report. Okay, yeah, it's going to come in higher on that report, and then they're going to revise 6 months of them lower next week, right? So how you want to trade that and how you want to position and approach it is, I think it's a fun start.
That's Mailbag Mondays.
Mailbag Monday, yeah.
That's what they are. Except, if you're listening to this, don't trade like my dad unless you're good enough. Just hodl. But
don't trade at all. You're not good enough.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next week and talk to you in the comments and talk to you on the internet. Peace.